Hi, Bill. My name is Ali Reza. I'm a PhD candidate at Civil Engineering Department and a data analyst, which is something that I've been working on for quite a while. I'm actually working on a proof of concept for an IoT-based earthquake early warning platform for BC. And the idea is to tap into everyone's smart meter at every single house and get some data and produce some sort of early warning for the citizens. So I was wondering to what extent we can push the limits of using this analytics, the metadata that, as I've learned from you, the data about the data. To what extent? It's not a clear, fine line. There are some areas that I don't know personally if I'm crossing the boundary.
In that case, I think it's more a question of invading personal privacy of people. If you're just monitoring the vibrations and you're trying to correlate across area, then it's not. I don't see that as an issue. It's not because you're not invading their privacy, looking at what they think, what they feel, their papers and effects and things of that nature. So you're not really doing it. I mean, for that purpose. And the only thing that kind of thing. I can't really think how they would use that, I mean, against a person. I mean, it just seems like universally available kind of information.
There are applications that we're not really sure if these applications can come through because the IoT-based platforms are exponentially growing. And I was wondering, is there any general symptom or something that we can think for the second time and think deeper if this application is violating people's privacy or not?
I don't. I guess. Well, my guide is the Constitution. If you're violating any statement in the Constitution or the laws, then you're doing something that would violate it. But if you're looking at just the vibrations, and I don't see a law that it would violate, or you don't have a constitution, I don't think, but that's the one thing that set us apart, and that's been destroyed. So.
Hi, Bill. So it's clear that the data that was obtained post 9/11 was used to inform the rendition, detention, interrogation program. Since then, Senator Feinstein was the driving force behind pushing for the Senate Intelligence Committee report, which has then redacted all of the partner states. But it seems clear that in doing that report and looking at the partner states, everyone on that committee would have had to have looked at this source of data. And so it seems crazy to me that there hasn't been more information coming out about this. I mean, I know they're politicians that are on the committee, so they have their own self-interest, but that there would be no one within that committee that would look at that and say, look how much harm that's caused innocent people around the world and how that could affect citizens of our country. It blows my mind.
Well, if we had a first investigation of this under the Church Committee in the 1970s, and it just came out recently, of course, that one of the main targets of NSA was Senator Church, so also his committee. So that the idea was that they do this with the entire Senate and the House, also judges and even members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Supreme Court. So they're all being monitored. No one is exempt. So that gives them leverage against them. And when they do certain things, I keep thinking they've got something on them, and they're told what to do. So and that's why they can get through all of this, because there's so many people who are involved in this crime that they have to cover up for each other. If one falls, they all start to fall. For example, this is why Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker of the House, said impeaching George Bush was off the table. That's because she was one of the first members of Congress briefed on it. She was co-opted in early. They co-opted the 4 members of the intelligence committees, right? And she was the minority rep on the House Intelligence Committee. So when she agreed to those programs in early October 2001, then she was culpable. So if she allowed Bush to get impeached, he'd say, you have to include yourself. So, that's the leverage now they have against them. So, and the same is true for all those who are in those positions right now. They're all co-opted in, so they have to defend one another. The intelligence, the foreign FISA. I was on the Geraldo Rivera radio show on WABC in New York City once, and he invited me on through GAP, and I went through GAP to get up to it and talk to him.
The Government Accountability Project.
Yeah. And so I was on the phone with him, and we were just having small talk. And then he tells me, he says, "Now I'd like to welcome to the show my dear friend, ex-4-star General Michael Hayden." And so first thing to flash, this is a setup, okay? I'm being set up. And the second flash comes to me, no, this is the grand opportunity. I got this guy, 2 million people maybe are listening to this. Okay, so I'm gonna put it to him. So I wait for him to come on, and he says, "Oh, all the people there at NSA, they're all really good people and all this." And I said, "I agree totally. The vast majority of people there are hardworking, dedicated, patriotic people trying to do the job to help people. My problem was with NSA management when they started to spy on every U.S. citizen and everybody else in the world." And he said, "But it's all legal." And I said, "If you're talking about the FISA court, that's the Foreign Intelligence Court. What part of foreign is domestic?" And I was just trying to put him on the spot. So he after that, he never said a word. So I went on and said, all this stuff needs to be argued out in the Supreme Court, out in the open, where everybody can see it. And then you have a ruling on whether or not you're allowed to do this or not. Because it's the violation of the Fourth Amendment and all this. So, let's have it out in the open and be transparent about it. So after that, Geraldo Rivera ended the show. And then we went on the podcast, to find a copy of it so we could say, "Here, listen to this." And he deleted that podcast. Geraldo Rivera did. Because of his dear friend, this is how they cover up. Mainstream media is a part of this. They're all covering up for it. It was Casey, the director of CIA, who said we have an effort to infiltrate the media, and you'll know how successful we've been when 70% of what they believe is false. So that was back he said that in the early 80s, okay? So all of that, and that's why the mainstream media they won't show any of this. They won't show, I gave Fox, the New York Times, all these tap points and locations and everything. They should publish that, but none of them did. The only one who would show the Fairview slide was one of the he's got, I'll think of his name in a minute. It's terrible when you're old. You search for names. Terrible. He's one of the guys that got banned. What's his name? I'll think of it. But at any rate, he was the only one to do it. It was on, cable TV.
All right here in the white shirt, please.
For many Canadians, in the post-9/11 period, the face of the modern whistleblower has come to really just mean Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, all standing on the shoulders of people like Daniel Ellsberg. But these are all figures who, in one way or another, really did challenge American state power. I was hoping you could share with us a little bit what you feel the role of the modern whistleblower is in protecting democratic rights.
They're central to it. Where else are you going to learn about all these violations of your rights? You're not going to get it from your government. They're the ones violating it. So the only view you have and the only transparency is from a whistleblower. That's why I participate in at least once a month. I go on to Joe Loria, who is the editor of Consortium News, has a program from 4 to 7 every Friday to people who come on and talk about justifying what Julian Assange has done. That's why I go on there, because Julian Assange is one of the main places you can get the truth. And so what they're after him because he exposed their crimes. That's the problem with him. So and part of that was Chelsea Manning, the data that she gave out. If you looked at the collateral murder clip that's on the web, it's clearly a crime, a military crime. And it's not even a war there. Look, those people were just walking along with no guns. They just shot them all. Then they used the double tap principle. The double tap principle, and if you know this or not, once you hit the target, you wait. Then if people come around, you assume they're also part of it because they're trying to help. then you kill them too. That's what they do with drones with 2 missiles. That's what they did with the helicopter gunship. They waited till somebody came around, and some poor guy stopped to try to help this guy bleeding on the street, in his car with his kids, taking him to school. And then they killed him and wounded his kids. I mean, this is insane. These are war crimes. And yet nobody's doing anything. Why? Because they're all part of it.
Hi. I had a question concerning your recent work on the Russiagate stuff.
Okay.
Namely with the VIPS memos and stuff, which I'm, full disclosure, fully on board with what you produce. Mm-hmm. But I was curious as if you could explain some of your small faction of colleagues that disagreed with it. Maybe explain the merits of their argument and also maybe why they're wrong.
Well, why they have no substance, you mean? Yeah. Well, for the Russiagate, we looked at only published data, like the Goose for 2 data that was posted on the web. And looking at that, we calculated all the transfer rates for every file that was transferred. And the highest rate we had at that point was 49.1 megabytes per second. So we basically knew that that couldn't go across the international web to Russia. And they were claiming, Goose for 2 was claiming it was a hack from Russia. So that means you come across the web, get into a system, then drain it out. Well, it can only go at a certain speed across the web. The web only allows you a certain amount of space. They don't allow you to take up any large fiber, for example. You're not allowed. You're only allowed a certain limited amount of space. And I calculated what that was. We said it wouldn't go across, and we had a few people. I refer to them as the mentally impaired by emotion people. Yeah, because they're so emotionally.
Mentally impaired by?
Emotion.
Okay.
Because they're so emotionally attached to this argument that because they don't like Trump. Well, okay, if you don't like Trump, fine. But you still have to be objective about evidence, and this is the only evidence we had for Goose for 2. So when we looked at that, we calculated the high speed rate, and we had a lower speed rates. We had them all of them. So we showed the distribution of it. And then we said, well, this wouldn't go across the web. And some of our people disagreed. They said, well, on this network, they're talking about local networks that are high speed and so on, where they can do a large transfer. But going across the web means, thousands of miles. And you don't have that kind of capacity all the way over to Europe, let alone to Russia. So we said, well, okay, if you want to do that, we're going to try it. So we're going to say, okay, let's have an experiment to see how fast we can get that data across. So I had a hacker in Europe that was willing to do it. He traveled around a bit, so that gave him the opportunity to look at different places. So we tried it from Belgrade, Yugoslavia, from Albania, from the Netherlands in a couple of places, and from the UK for data centers. And the fastest we got for that transfer was between 2 data centers, one in the US and one in New Jersey. One in London and one in New Jersey. So that one gave us 12 megabytes per second, less than 1/4 the necessary capacity to transmit that data on the highest rate. So we knew it wasn't being transmitted over there. So that told us that. And then we looked at the data that he put out. And if you looked at that data, there were 2 sets, one dated the 5th of July and one dated the 1st of September. So if you looked at it and just looked at minutes and seconds, those 2 files merged like this without a conflict. Now, the random probability of that being impossible is pretty low. It's like, if for any given second, they all have to be taken in order, too. It's like 1 chance in 60 seconds here, 1 chance in 60 ending by the next file that comes from the first group when it starts, and then at the end, you have the 1 in 60 and then 1 in 60 start and end, 1 in 61. So you end up with there were 9 batches, and those 9 batches fit together with the previous data like that. So that was 1 chance in 60 to the 60 to the 9th times 2 to the 18th power. Just of randomly doing that. So that told us, just from the data, we're not. There's no emotion here at all. It's all just fact. This is random. This is forensics analysis. It's just the data. Anybody can do this. You can go check this. You can validate it. So, but that told us that Goose for 2 made one database pool separated into 2 and set out 2 batches, saying one coming later, saying that once he put the first one out, he thought they would try to do protections to stop him. That was the idea behind the thought. And the second one was to say, you can't do anything about it. I've got the data anyway. So you can't stop me. So that told us he was manipulating the data, which told us he was faking it. So he was a fake. We knew it didn't go transatlantic, but all those speeds were compatible with a download to a thumb drive.
Bill, the U.S. has been pretty open about its regime change operation in Venezuela right now. There was just a widespread blackout that lasted several days. Now Maduro has actually pointed to allegedly evidence of U.S. intelligence interference with the electrical grid. Talk about if that's a possibility and what agency you think would be carrying that out.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's an absolute possibility. I mean, the Vault 7 and Vault 8 data can show all kinds of attacks on grids and servers, switches, networks, everything. It's basically all that stuff they call cybersecurity. They don't fix them because they want to look into what everybody's doing. And when they don't fix them, everybody's vulnerable. So when, some other country, I mean, they have no monopoly on smart people. Somebody's going to find that somewhere in China, Russia, Germany, somewhere. And so, when they attack, they can get through. So the point is they don't fix those things because that gives them ability to get into things, right? What they don't understand, so can other people. And that's why we had the hack on the OPM, all the data on everybody in the U.S. that ever had a classified clearance. All that data, the SF-86, which is your entire life history, organization, where you worked, everything, and supervisors and all that. So it allowed them to reconstruct the entire intelligence community of the United States, including, where everybody worked, all the members of all the embassies around the world, everything. They now know who they are and how, who they work for. So yeah, it's absolutely possible. So, I mean, that's the thing they should fix. The first swindle was, in my mind anyway, the first swindle was you have to give up privacy for security. Absolute swindle. They already knew that too. It just was a matter of gaining power, control, and money. And the second one was cybersecurity. They knew all these weaknesses, they didn't fix them. And so when somebody got attacked, they kept coming out saying, we need more money for cybersecurity. Right. Why don't you fix the problems you have? Then maybe we'll have some cybersecurity. That's the real issue. But they don't want to do that because it gives them the ability to poke into what other people are doing. And the third one is the Russiagate, the attempt to create a new Cold War for a few more $1 trillion, So I didn't talk about the latest one, which showed that the DNC data was downloaded to a thumb drive. That's the posted DNC data by WikiLeaks. We went in to analyze that and found that the last modified times on all of the files that we looked at, 500 plus, we only went to the first 500 and gave up. So because it was all consistent, the times ending for the last modified were all even, ending in even numbers. That's a function of a fat file format. It will round everything off to the nearest even number, which means that's what evidence of download to a thumb drive or a CD-ROM. That's the storage program to download to a storage device. So, and we found it all on all 500 we looked at, which means the random probability of that happening is 2 to the 500 power, which is like 1 chance out of 1 followed by 150 zeros at base 10. Pretty small. So we said, obviously these were downloaded to a thumb drive and transferred physically for some distance before WikiLeaks posted them. So we gave that as evidence to the president's lawyers, as well as published it.
When it comes to the mainstream media, just to follow up on the questions about Russiagate, and I think a lot of us kind of looked at this whole thing and went like, this is impossible in the first place. You have a group of people like CNN, MSNBC, Young Turks, whatever, on one side. You have guys like Dan Bongino, Fox News on the other side. The truth is the truth, whether you like it or not.
Right.
What is going on? Why can't these two talk? Is this deliberately divisive? Are they doing this on purpose in order to create something? Or is it something else? Is it just basically everyone's just losing their minds because we're at that point?
A mixture of all that. But anyway, no, think of it this way. CIA infiltrated the mainstream media, right? So they're giving the narrative from CIA, not necessarily the president. So, and they're a part of the deep state, they're a part of the nonviolent coup attempt to get rid of Trump. Some of that's coming out it was all between those people in the Department of Justice and the FBI. They were all part of this soft coup, if you want to call it that. So, but they failed at that, and now they're being exposed. And so I think you're going to see a lot more on that coming out.
That actually scares me.
Yeah.
I think this scares a lot of people because a lot of us realize that this whole thing is a joke. But the problem is that I don't know if the world is ready to hear this. I think they're just going to lose their mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, the point is we have to tell them openly and expose it. I mean, otherwise they have no chance of knowing. They'll just fumble along blindly, following the bell. Who's got the bell, you know? It's like how you control people. That's what I meant about control. I mean, you select only certain information that they allow the public to know. That way they're uninformed or misinformed. Either way. I mean, in the intelligence we call that disinformatio or manipulatia. These are standard procedures for intelligence. Standard. I mean, it goes back hundreds of years.
May I have two questions?
Oh, I think that we're actually at time.
Okay.
So I just wanted to ask one final question, and then I think we have to wrap up. So we're at a university. What lessons or advice can you share with students who are thinking about how to channel their energies after leaving university?
Well, I think wherever you go to work, you need to carry values and principles with you. And make sure they don't, you know, the first thing they try to do is corrupt your values and integrity. Okay? That's the first thing they try. You have to fit in with the organization and its theme. I never did that at NSA. I mean, they didn't get rid of me because I was solving all kinds of things that they couldn't do. And so they kept me around, you know. So that's the reason they did anyway. So because they were afraid if I left that they wouldn't be able to do these things, you know. So that's the way I survived. But not everybody can. You have to be careful how you want to survive in your organization, right? So I would say you have to try to maintain your integrity and principles of, you know, and values somehow, and try to maybe influence that organization to change in that direction too. I mean, that's the only thing we have to try. You can try to do it from the bottom up, I guess, is what I'm talking about. I believe in infiltration, in other words.
All right, well, everyone please join me in thanking Bill.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.